Nearly 30 years ago, the founders of the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship described survivorship as the act of battling adversity and hanging tough despite bad luck and difficult circumstances. That was written 30 years ago by Dr. Fitzhugh Mullen, who was one of the founders of NCCS and a longtime survivor himself of cancer. He said it went on to say, it's living with a constant life challenge that pits the desire to live against the possibility of death. A cancer diagnosis, however, for many people in this room is something we all know very personally. It's always an unwelcome intruder, an unexpected one in our lives, particularly if we're young and otherwise healthy, or have been, as I was at the age of 24 when I was first diagnosed. For an individual diagnosed with cancer in a family, it's like a one-way ticket to a land where you don't know the language, you don't know the people, you don't have a map to follow. I mean, who among us here would think about taking a trip to a foreign land with those many obstacles in our way without getting some hints as to how to manage our life there? And yet, everyone who's diagnosed with cancer, except maybe a physician or people who've lost a loved one to cancer, even knows what that terrain is like. So I would argue that having a map, having a plan for that journey is critical to our survival. That land is changing very rapidly. In the days when I started out as an advocate, there was no internet. There was no way to look up my diagnosis or get information, and sometimes misinformation. So we relied almost solely on our doctors to guide us and help us. And today, we've got a very different type of patient advocate survivor walking into doctors' offices. They may be informed, they may be misinformed, but they have people like us who are collectively here in this room to check off the box. And am I thinking about this right? Is there more that I can be doing? That land, as I said, is changing for the better. We who are involved in the survivorship movement are changing that landscape every day by finding ways to map and civilize this new territory. Almost a decade ago, we approached Congresswoman Capps about a series of studies that had been done by the Institute of Medicine on the quality of cancer care in our country. And what was so upsetting to her as a nurse, a mother of a child who had a diagnosis, terrible diagnosis of cancer, was the shock that we hadn't been doing as well as we thought we were doing. That we were making progress in science, but not in the delivery of the care, the way that people understand their diagnosis and use it to help them make better decisions. My cancer survivorship began in 1971, pre-internet, pre-CAT scans. I had a 4-week-old son, Jonathan, who's now 43. I'll do the math for you, I'm 68. I was 24 years old. I was given a very poor prognosis. Radiation was the only treatment available. The treatment that eventually cured me the second time that I was diagnosed was in clinical trial when I was first diagnosed, and I wasn't eligible for the trial because I was 4 weeks postpartum. So a lot of our advocacy work has been involved in opening these doors to access and understanding the processes of care as much as the outcomes of care. I was cancer-free until 1983. I had a recurrence of my Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was cancer-free again until 2007 when I had bilateral mastectomies due to the late effects of the radiation treatment that I had had many, many years before. And today I'm living with pretty serious heart disease, chronic pain, due to degeneration of bone, tissue, and cartilage due to my original treatment. So long-term survivorship, which is also a big part of the legislation that Congresswoman Capps and Boustany are supporting, would really make it possible for every one of us, or people we love or know, to make sure that we have a plan that reflects our values and what we want from our life. If we're given, if we're diagnosed with a metastatic cancer, which is unlikely to be cured, we want as much to know that we can live a good quality of life as important as the length of days. I had cancer under the best circumstances. I don't want to be misleading in standing up here today. I'm a very privileged person. I had a very supportive family, a very supportive employer. I had good health insurance, a loving husband. I had financial resources and a lot of education and medical background in my family. And with all those advantages, I lived as more than 14 million people live today, with a fear of recurrence, and doctors who did their best, but who lacked the evidence about how to provide follow-up care, both over and underutilization of diagnostics to treatment, or the fallout of that lack of evidence. So we're working today to, again, support Congresswoman Capps-Bustani and their colleagues, and as they introduce this bill, to make care planning, which sounds very simple, but think about taking a trip. It's no different. It's just a trip you may not want to take, but all the more important to be informed about where you're going, how you're going to get there, and how to get home. I want to thank you both on behalf of all of us here and all the cancer groups that have supported this bill for your leadership. You're losing a wonderful colleague, and we're losing a very dear friend.
I'm not going anywhere.
Right. I want to thank you both on behalf of all of us.
Thank you.